maintenance building on the east side of the hospital. In order to handle the boilers.
It's
And all
6
the
o'clock.
generators.
We'll go ahead and call the meeting to order. First item will be roll call.
Brown,
Here.
Cox,
Here.
Davis,
Here.
Turkey,
Here.
Graves,
Here.
yeah.
We'll say the pledge, please.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Everyone can take a moment of silence if they care to. We'll take a motion to approve the agenda.
So,
Do that. All in favor, say aye. All opposed, same sign. Everyone's had a chance to look over those previous minutes. If there are no additions or corrections, they'll stay approved as presented. We have one visitor, Faith, with us. There was no public comment sent in, so we will move on to the officers' report, the chief's report.
Welcome, everybody. We'll go ahead and go back to the call volume report. It looks like on page 5 there. October, not nearly as bad as the 2 months prior. So we've kind of leveled off, I think. Windsor was still remains pretty busy, but we did see a decrease in transfers out of Golden Valley last month. I'm not sure the reason why yet, but every once in a while we'll see them taper off like that. We've still been running mutual aid 911 calls, so I don't anticipate that to be a trend. There were a lot of helicopters last month. That's the most we've called all year, with 5 in Sedalia, and I believe just 1 in Windsor. And if I haven't said it before, I do separate the 2 different helicopter. There's one of them that's a flight non-transport, so that's going to be if we're working a big car wreck and we land the helicopter right there and they fly off. We don't bill for those calls because we didn't transport. But if we take them to a designated LZ, that's the other one where you can see it up above that on the transport section where it's transported from C to LZ. So that's the difference there, and those numbers are included in the totals at the bottom there. Year-to-date numbers look about where I expected them to be, so no big surprises. Dr. Gus did come by this afternoon and gave him just a brief update on operations, how things are going, CQI, QA, so forth. No surprises. He was just passing through town, so he won't be here tonight. But he's just looking over a lot of calls with those flights. Those are all an automatic review from the medical director. Everything goes on a helicopter. So. Any questions on call? All right. We are approaching that lovely time of year where we kind of hunker down, make sure we've got all of our salt in our barrels and so forth, and hopefully we don't have a whole bunch of it this winter, but we're good to go on salt and rock salt and so forth, all the stations. I don't have any update on chassis shortage, but in your books or in your packets, there's some information on just market trends and availability of material, raw materials, and so forth in there. That's pretty interesting read. Of course, there's not really anything surprising in there. It all goes up at the very end of the graph. So the U.S. Department of Transportation has reached out to Ford Motor Company, and I would imagine all the major motor companies, in our case it's Ford, but about upping production and ramping things up if possible. I don't know that there's going to be anything done on that because a lot of it, like I said, is just raw materials, chips, and so forth. So we'll see. We'll see what happens there. I'm hopeful, but I'm not very optimistic at this point. We did have a paramedic bit by a loose pet bird in patient's house, and the only reason I put that in there is it's a public meeting, so I figured I could give this little PSA. If you call 911, please put your pets up. No work loss or anything like that. He's fine. The bird's fine too. Vehicle mileage, I did want to point out that unit 10 down there at the bottom should have been in the yellow. Now that it's surpassed 150,000 miles, that one just barely eclipsed the yellow thing. There's some others fast approaching behind it, but I didn't recolor that bar, so that's no correction on that. So should have done. We are just started the ceiling and wall repair out at the Station 2 where they fixed the AC drain issue. So that's all getting repaired pretty much as we speak. Let's see, moving on down. We've been updating, we've been importing, I should say, CAD data from dispatch. We've been doing that just about a month now. I've weeded out almost all the old calls and we're 100% on that CAD import. And that's been working out really, really well. All that information just dumps right into our reporting system. The only thing we've had some issues with is mileage, and that's just a matter of, the computers not talking to each other, but everything else, all our times, location, any other information that we can import has been working really great. So that's a very nice addition to that console is to have that CAD export. Yeah, and as I say, we're just now getting a full month of calls in there, so I'll be reviewing them very closely to make sure everything's still fine. The only thing that's changed is our run number format a little bit, which won't affect these reports. Everything else stays the same as far as the board overall billing and everything is concerned.
Eric, tell me about the typical football game standby.
We get schedules from all the big schools, anybody that's doing, varsity, sometimes JV, but mostly varsity games, we'll get schedules ahead of time. If it's an unscheduled game, they usually call us about it, in advance, a week in advance. If it's something we know that's going to take all night, or if it's on a particularly busy time, we'll put on an extra truck just for that event. But most of the time it's the on-duty trucks that just go over and either rotate through or they just stay there as a dedicated unit. If someone is injured at one of those games, the ambulance that's on scene, I won't say positively won't transport, but ideally they don't transport. They treat, they call for an additional ambulance, they come out, pick them up, and then they transport. That way the on-duty crew stays there.
A lot of schools have trainers.
Mhm.
Do those trainers consult with your people?
They do, yeah.
And we do that free of liability or anything?
Yeah, I mean,
It's just collegiality then?
Yeah, as far as an actual consult, if you mean like what to do in a particular situation, they pretty much leave it up to us if it involves us to that point. But they're also, the flip side of that is they're also very good about not calling for us unless they truly need us. So,
Right. Well,
yeah.
when I was a wrestling coach, at a tournament, there was a kid that dislocated his elbow so that his arm was going like
Mhm.
this.
Yeah.
And he was squealing out there and all the trainers looked at each other and
Yeah.
this doctor jumps down from the stands and quickly reduces it right there on the
Lucky.
spot. And I'm wondering, is that something that, not that particular injury, but if there's something where they're looking at each other, your folks just automatically jump in there? then?
Yes, sir. Yeah, we've got the good squeal medicine for sure. Yeah, we can alleviate that pain. We don't typically reduce things. Sometimes that happens on its own. Shoulder dislocations are notorious for popping back into place. But most of them, we medicate and splint them just so they don't bleed or cause any further injury, and then we'll take care of their pain and anxiety.
And
Usually
then when-
anxiety is the big part of it.
If it's a visiting team, when they travel, sometimes they don't bring everybody and everything.
Correct. Yeah.
Well, it's good that you're there.
Yeah, we enjoy it. And it's like I said, most of the schools we're coordinating with the athletic coordinator. So sometimes they'll just call us and there's not really a contact point at the smaller schools. The bigger ones are they're doing very well organizing those events. So, yeah.
Thank you.
All right, on page 4. Like I said, beat you to the punch there. 15 football games. Tis the season. We do a lot of football games this time of year. The fire standbys. I do not doubt there were more than 3. Some of them get written up initially one way and then turn into something else. But at a minimum, we ran 3 last month. So none of those are going to be transporting incidents. Flow Hammer was featured in the, let's see, that was 31 October, yeah, on Halloween. He was in a 20 under 40. So I hope that anybody got to read that article. That was a really nice little gig on him there in that section was that in, I believe it was. Well,
It's just a special.
just a special section, yeah. So that was a nice little story on him, good picture and all that. Flows. I was contacted to, advise of who we had on staff. I thought Flo really fit the bill for that. He's been a great addition to PCAD. We all love Flo. So our office is closed this Friday for Veterans Day, of course. I did want to update the TCE Education Symposium was fantastic. It went really well for the first event like that. It was very well organized. It was a full day event. We had lunch sponsors that came over, some vendors. We had a little booth set up. Justin was on the planning committee, so that helped tremendously. And that'll be a yearly thing. I got to teach over there for a little bit, and a couple of physicians at Buffalo came down. That did a phenomenal job. It was very interesting. It wasn't, a huge turnout, but I don't know what the actual numbers were. The auditorium is well seated.
Around 40, I think.
Yeah, yeah, and I look forward to that growing over the years, especially if you guys get new education center. So, yeah. Consideration by the board. Again, we're doing union negotiations. We have an actual date set for that, which is later on this month, 2 weeks from now, actually, 2 weeks from yesterday. And then staffing, we did lose, we'll be losing a paramedic who's going on to fly helicopters down in Springfield. And of course, I always encourage people to go to, go do that want to do that. It's a great experience, but they always come back. So we'll be losing him in December. He's going to stay on part-time. And then also we have a full-time EMT who's had a couple children and is going to be spending some more time at home. So they also went from full-time to part-time. So we'll have to hire for those positions. Good news is we've still got a couple trucks where we can split paramedics. So we're primarily looking at EMTs, hiring EMTs right now, whether that be full-time or part-time to fill in those gaps and try to keep the overtime down, of course. Don't have any resignations other than those status changes I talked about. And that is all I have in my report, John.
Are there any other questions, Barry? If not, we'll move on to the CFO report.
Got bills for you tonight. Page 6 is the summary of the current bills due. And then the details on pages 7 through 10. Any questions on any of that? The credit card statement is on pages 11 through 14 as well. Questions on any of that?
There was an eBay purchase from a little bit farther than halfway down the page.
Those were those radios you guys approved
Okay.
for us to purchase from you.
Are there any other questions on the bills? I'll take a motion to approve payment of the outstanding bills. Someone do a second. Second. All in favor, say aye. Aye. All opposed, same sign. We want unfinished business resolution 2022-06. Declare election candidate filing. Pages 15 to 17.
I believe, I wanted to point out, I believe the 27th, December 27th date is different than it usually is this year. It's usually not on that date, so I was asked to point that out by our chief administrator training. Yeah. So, 5 o'clock on the 27th.
So the 27th is correct, it's just not the usual.
Yeah.
No other questions? I take a motion to approve that resolution. So moved. Second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Ambulance replacement, pages 16 to 38.
A whole section from 18 on back, that the graphs I was talking about is on, it says page 5. I think that's actually page, 22 back there, where you can see all the raw materials, truck bodies, just everything. Just like, think I'm breaking any news. But I guess if there's any news is that the end is not in sight yet. Everything I get from the manufacturers, including ours, is, these are desperate times. Ordering ambulances is something we have to really anticipate probably a year in advance of what we thought we were going to. Or we're getting behind. I think if we order what we need to order now, we'll be basically staying even with things. What we have tonight is a new ambulance replacement. And then finally, we get to go into the remount stage of things. And the prices on those are on pages 29 and 34. 29 is, that's the new unit. Yeah, there it is, 256, 761. So they went up considerably. The lead time on them, it's going to be, I think, I don't know if they put an estimate on there.
It's
Either.
540 to 720,
Yeah, 547.
so up to 2 years.
Yeah, up to 2 long years waiting for those. So to circle back to my report, like I said, we've already, at this point, one that definitely needs to be ordered to replace, and that was when they were building it in 6 months. So I'm getting a little bit, hoping to be a little bit proactive on ordering some of these ambulances. So the new one is 256, 761, and the other one is on page 34. And that will be a 2024 E450, just like we've been getting, same ambulance. That remount, they go through and pretty much change everything. The chassis, of course, all the suspension on the chassis that the box actually sits on top of. Of course, they go through the box from pretty much head to toe. AC units are replaced. Any kind of main boards. Essentially, it's a new ambulance. Get it out there, but it's considerably cheaper.
What do they keep?
The actual frame of the ambulance, the graphics stay on there unless you're changing anything or anything needs to be repaired. The lighting system stays the same unless there needs to be repaired. They go through, like I said, they go through it from top to bottom and fix what needs to be fixed. But primarily, I don't know if it details it in there. Yeah, page 35. Yeah, so you can see what all they go through in that, of course. And again, that's mounted to a new chassis whenever that finally comes in. And that's the big weight is that their manufacturing has slowed down a little bit, but primarily their differences are in the cost of materials and the availability of chassis. So I'm excited to see the AEVs get remounted. They're very, very, very well-made boxes that you couldn't be happier with. And the fact that we get a kind of recycling like this is, I think, it's a nice savings to the district. And we know for sure we can get one remount out of them. If we can get more than that, we will. But that's based on the manufacturer's safety recommendations. If anything's going wrong structurally with the unit. I like I said, we can bank on one remount and hope for two. Which, as the way it goes, if we're remounting trucks now, remounting AEVs. We're about 5 years into where we actually started buying AEVs. So we figure we go 5 years between remounts, they'll last quite a while. Those units got a good shelf life on them.
So the budget, what do we have budgeted for the other ambulance that we just purchased?
So
It
we
was
still,
236, wasn't it? If memory serves me right.
like, it is. Let's see if I can get in here. 235, 472. Is what, the one you have on order still, that was what the cost was. So.
When did we order that one?
We probably ordered that in the end, I'd say the December of 2021,
And then
right?
we didn't.
Is that right? Will?
So the order, the one we're still waiting on was December of 21.
Right.
One we just got was the summer of 21.
And it came right before the fair.
Yeah, and that's when it was a year out, so now we're 2
Yeah.
years out.
So looking at the arrow on page 4,
They're-
if you go from when we ordered December 2021 at 235 to this one at 256, that's only $20,000 more. Even though that arrow has gone up phenomenally.
They,
Also, if we'd have took that money we put in the CD and bought an ambulance, we'd save way more than the interest we're getting on it, but.
Well, we can't get 'em.
But
We can't get any ambulances.
Can't
It
get
doesn't
it.
matter, but we
Yeah.
can't get them.
Right. Anyway, I just thought it was kind of interesting, that graph on page, well, at page 4, page 21. Actually. This is only $20,000 more than the one we ordered last.
And it'll be 2 years before we get it. It'll be 2024.
And the price is good,
yeah.
Until 11/28.
but once we order, there's no surprises at the other end. Well,
I definitely asked the question, would it ever be going down? That got laughed too. But as far as how much more it's gonna go up, I can't anticipate. Like I said, one thing at a time, but I at least wanted to mention to the board tonight that it would be very prudent to go ahead and order those other 2 remounts so that they're here, at least we can get a VIN maybe scheduled in for us. We wouldn't be paying for everything, of course, until we got it, but I'd like to go ahead and order them as soon as possible. So I don't think I'll put that on next agenda, or if that might be able to something to do that tonight. So it's not a purchase per se.
And this remount procedure is fairly standard.
Yeah, well, it's standard in ambulances that are built well. A lot of them are the 2 transits we have, for example, right now, there's no way to remount a transit as is, they're just a box, a van. But even the cheaper, I call them disposable units, generally by the time they age out of their chassis, they're torn up and the bulkheads are broken, they're structural.
The advantage to ordering the new one is you have an additional ambulance versus keeping the same numbers when they're remounted. Yeah.
I believe so, yes.
So we're looking at a difference of $90,000 difference probably.
Okay. Do you have to take those units to the factory or?
There's, generally, they'll come up and flatten them down there. But on the remounts, we were just talking about that, you know, if it'll save us money or time or whatever, we may end up just driving it down, flying back or something, if it's cheaper to do it that way. So we'll look at all the options when it comes up. It's not that bad of a drive. We can take it down ourselves. Don't go to Arkansas.
6 miles a gallon, that's
Yeah.
pretty expensive.
On everybody drive 95 miles an hour out there. And don't crack.
So you're, want to order 1 ambulance and 2 remounts?
the two remounts are additional to what we're talking about tonight. So it'd be,
Three total.
yeah, 3 total.
Ambulance and 3 regions.
Yes. Yes, thank you.
So that in our equipment replacement plan, that'll be our 23 replacements and our 2024 replacements, which we might get 2 in 2023, or 2024, I'm sorry. So we're still gonna be a year behind there.
So that'd be on the mileage chart, so we're getting basically a new one, and so it's any, so it'd be all the units, what? So we did one, 4?
At this point, yeah, unless something catastrophic happens with one of those and gets it backlined or something, it'll be those last 4 in the green.
It's actually last Friday,
Transits.
because we already have one on order.
Sorry. Of course, the transits are off that list, the 2 yellow ones, because they're not written out. So, yeah, essentially, I'd be shocked if anything goes up to 2023. Hopefully, AV's done very good, you know, when you see you at Applebee's, tell you it's gonna be 30 minutes and get you down to 10, you know, that's what they strive for, and they've met us on that. I don't think we've ever extended completely out to their worst case dates yet, so they're.
Who's AEV's competition?
They're owned by Rev Group, who owns just about everybody. So their competition isn't really their competition.
So there's no deal to be had.
No, there's a
Anyone
couple.
against the other.
There's a couple other manufacturers. One of them's Canadian, and they're probably $100,000 more expensive per unit. The other one is called a Horton. I don't want to disparage Horton. They're good ambulances, but they also are very quite a bit more expensive, probably a good 40% more expensive, 30 to 40% more expensive. They both have very good test procedures. Anything below the AV. And I don't think Rev Group makes any other cheaper ones than that, except for these disposable trucks you'll see out, you know, they call them the economy line stuff, but they're dialysis transport vans and things like that. Nothing of an emergency like 911 nature. But yeah, the other ones we looked at were all across the board considerably more expensive.
Okay, as long as we looked around, thank you.
Yeah.
Is there a motion to approve the order of those ambulance and 3 replacements?
The whole thing, all 4 units. that look like it.
I'll make that motion. Is there a second? Second. Is there any further discussion?
So budget wise, this will be in the budget year we expect delivery.
Well, I'm gonna go ahead and budget for 2023. So that we have the money,
Okay,
and then we'll budget for 2024 as well.
so we'll just roll it back.
And we'll carry it forward, just like the ambulance we have on order right now. When are we, do we have a date?
3rd quarter next year.
That 3rd quarter of next year, so we'll roll that forward.
If we
Carry
need to,
forward.
we'll roll it back if it's later.
They're really good about coordinating delivery dates and so forth, when, as best they can.
So we're not spending money that we are endowed about having.
Is there any further discussion? If not,
Are you purchasing 4 ambulances?
We're ordering 2 remounts. Right, 2 and then 1 remount, a new one. So for next year, if they all showed up on time, it'd be a new one and a remount next year, and then 2 remounts the following year. But because of delays, we're gonna get that deal preempted. Because it's about right at the time. Yeah.
there's no other discussion. All in favor, say aye. Aye. All opposed, same sign. Since we have no new business, I'll take a motion to go into closed session pursuant to RSMO 610.021, section 1. Do we have a second?
Second.
All in favor, and it'd be roll call.
Rob,
Yes.
Zach.
Yes.
David,
Yes.
Turkey,
Yes.
Frank.